recently on the issue of flood insurance and how many people really did not get serviced well by their government in the wake of Superstorm Sandy. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Good morning, Bill. I'm good, and I was just listening with interest to your comments on the minimum wage.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Real quick before we get into flood insurance, what do you think is coming down the pike for us?
Well, I don't know what Phil Murphy intends, except he's made it pretty clear that there's no tax he doesn't want to raise, including, that's not a tax, but that's a burden that ultimately will cause more people to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And I know it from experience, Bill. When I was growing my business, I used to measure profitability by customer and by employee, and there's a tipping point where, for a lot of jobs, where if you raise the wage too much, you're paying somebody more than you're able to earn, and those jobs will go away. It's just unfair to the most vulnerable people if the wage gets raised to a level that's not sustainable.
You know, it's like Tom. They miss the very basic economic point where you get somebody at an entry level job and they're sweeping the floor, and the goal is they move up. They become the assistant manager, the manager, right? Like there should be growth, but it has to come from growth and not government mandate.
Well, I think in that case you're right, and flood insurance is another one. People sometimes don't see the bigger picture. What I faced when I got on the committee, Bill, was a chairman, decent guy, but from an inland area, and he made it clear that he wanted to put the flood insurance program on a path to extinction. And it's taken me a while to get him to grasp this isn't just a gift to a small number of homeowners. This is an absolute requirement for the 140 million people who live in coastal counties.
Can I ask you, Congressman, can you just give us a little bit of that pitch? Because I come from the philosophy that government should not be in the insurance business, that the reality is there are too many people living in high-risk areas, and I would think that where the opportunity exists, when we did the massive government spending in the Ninth Ward in Louisiana, in New Orleans, for example, that we had an opportunity to move people out of a dangerous flood zone that may have eventually reduced the cost to the taxpayer. What's the challenge with that, and what's the practical reality? Because I am a practical person first. I think you can't just stick with your ideological guns and say, okay, I'm not going to hear any other side. I think this is the problem that Ted Cruz and Rand Paul have when it comes to things like health care, but that's another story. What was your big selling point?
Well, I think you have to go back to why flood insurance was created in the late 60s in the first place. And it did two critical things, creating a federal program. First, people were getting federal grants after floods, and with the flood insurance program, at least they're paying into that system all along, so that's helpful and saves the taxpayer money. But secondly, I think what gets overlooked is that for a community to join the flood program, and people don't know that, but it's not just available for any individual who wants to buy flood insurance. Your community has to participate.
Okay.
And communities have to adopt flood standards, floodplain mitigation standards. So the flood program has done more to address the very issue you just described than anything else in the last 50 years. The flood program is what causes towns to adopt floodplain management zoning standards and to begin to control how people build in risky areas. So it's pretty essential. And I am all for the private market playing an increasing role to the degree that they will. And our bill does things to incentivize private insurers to do just that. But where there's no available market, it is in everyone's best interest to have a continuation of the flood program. And I think that's what the chairman has come full circle now and realized that this is different. Flood is different than any other peril. It's different than hurricane and tornado and earthquake and others because it's so ubiquitous. It's the most common natural disaster across the country. And this program has done a world of good for communities to make sure that the risk is reduced.
So this is moving through the House right now. Is it posted yet? Will it get a vote soon?
Well, we got it through the Financial Services Committee.
And who's the chairman? Who's the chairman?
Jeb Henserling.
Okay.
And from Texas.
Yep.
And, and I'm proud to say it's not only a long-term reauthorization, we got 5 years, but we got some important changes that I was fighting for affordability. The initial bill, I thought, went too far, too fast, and we were able to make some important changes to keep flood insurance affordable. Very importantly, to keep it available. He wanted to eliminate flood insurance on all new construction after 4 years, and we were able to work at encouraging the private market, but not eliminating the National Flood Program in 4 years. And then we doubled the mitigation coverage in the policy. That was a proposal that I made, so that people with flood insurance will have $60,000 instead of $30,000 for increased cost of compliance coverage. And bear in mind, Bill, people are paying. The vast majority of flood insurance homeowners are paying risk rates. That means they're paying a full rate. They're not being subsidized by other.
Okay. That's a big part of it. So bottom line is, as this goes through, this is going to be a help to anybody living in a coastal area that needs to be covered by flood insurance. Please keep me posted on the progress of it. I got a break for traffic and weather, but it's always good to talk to you, Congressman. I really appreciate your efforts, and I have to tell you, it's one thing that you come from a background of saying this is my free market principle. It's another thing to realize that when the rubber hits the road in Washington, there has to be a little give and take, and I think you've really done a fantastic job with that, with regard to health care and with regard to flood insurance, and I appreciate your common sense.
Okay, Bill, and I'm happy to keep chatting with you.
Yeah, you bet. We'll be back in touch.